My name is Ethan Hayes, and for most of my life, I've spoken a language few people understand. It isn't a language of words, but of lines, angles, and spaces. It's the silent poetry of a steel beam meeting a glass facade, the quiet rhythm of a well-designed floor plan. I'm an architect. For the last 10 years, the heart, soul, and creative engine of Hayes and Son Construction. The company my father, Richard Hayes, built from the ground up. My world was one of quiet concentration. The crisp, earthy smell of fresh blueprints, the satisfying scratch of a graphite pencil on vellum, the low hum of the plotter printing out the bones of a future landmark. This was my sanctuary, the place where I made sense of the world. Outside this sanctuary was the other world, the world of my father and my older brother, Leo. Theirs was a world of loud handshakes, boisterous laughter, and the art of the deal. They were the faces. I was the foundation they stood upon. I remember a Tuesday morning meeting like it was yesterday. It was for the Kensington Tower project, a potential jewel in our company's crown. I had spent 3 sleepless weeks crafting a design that was both innovative and respectful of the city's historic skyline. It was, I felt, the best work I had ever done. In the boardroom, the air thick with the smell of expensive coffee and ambition, I laid out the plans. I spoke about the sustainable materials, the way the light would filter through the atrium at different times of day, the structural integrity that would make it last a century. The clients, a stern-faced committee of investors, were nodding, their eyes tracing the lines of my design with genuine interest. I felt a rare spark of pride ignite in my chest. Then, just as I was about to discuss the engineering specifics, Leo stepped forward. He placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that looked supportive to outsiders but felt to me like a muzzle. "What my brilliant brother is trying to say," Leo began, his voice booming with a manufactured charisma, "is that this isn't just a building. It's a statement. The Kensington Tower won't just be a place to work. It will be the beating heart of this city's financial district. It's not just concrete and glass, gentlemen. It's a legacy." He didn't present a single new fact. He just took my detailed, tangible work and wrapped it in glossy, abstract paper. He paced the room, charming them with anecdotes, making eye contact, selling the feeling of the building, not the building itself. I faded into the background, becoming just another part of the presentation materials. When it was over, the lead investor shook Leo's hand vigorously. "Son, you've sold us." My father, who had been watching from the head of the table, beamed. He stood up and clapped Leo on the back, his laughter echoing in the room. He didn't even glance my way. Later, as we were leaving, he pulled me aside. "Listen, son," he said, his tone casual, almost dismissive. "You do good work, you really do. But Leo, he knows how to handle people. That's what builds an empire." I swallowed the familiar bitterness, the taste of being essential but unseen. It was the story of my life. I designed the award-winning structures. Leo accepted the awards. I solved the complex engineering problems. Leo told the press how our company overcame challenges. I told myself it didn't matter. One day, the work would speak for itself. It had to. That day seemed to be on the horizon a few months later. Our company was approaching its 50th anniversary. To celebrate, my father planned a massive black-tie gala. It was the talk of the industry. At a family dinner, he made an announcement that made my heart stop. At the gala, he declared, looking around the table, "I'll be making a very important announcement about the future of this company, about who will lead it into the next 50 years. He then turned his gaze to me. It was a rare moment of direct, focused attention. "Ethan," he said, his voice serious, "I'm giving you the lead on the new riverfront complex. It's the biggest project we've ever undertaken. The future of this company rests on this. This is your chance to prove yourself." For the first time in years, a genuine, unadulterated wave of hope washed over me. This was it. This was the final test. The riverfront complex wasn't just another project. It was a city-defining development. If I could nail this, he would have to see me. He would have to acknowledge that I was more than just the quiet engine in the back room. I poured my entire being into that project. Days blurred into nights. My diet consisted of cold coffee and lukewarm takeout. The plans were ambitious, a symphony of residential, commercial, and green spaces that would revitalize the entire district. One rainy afternoon, seeking a break, I ducked into an old coffee shop downtown. As I waited for my order, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Still hiding behind drafting tables, kid? I turned to see Arthur Vance, a wry smile on his weathered face. Arthur was a brilliant old-school architect who had been my father's original partner. They had split decades ago over creative differences, which was Arthur's polite way of saying he couldn't stand my father's substance-free salesmanship. He was a legend and a quiet mentor to me. I showed him the preliminary sketches for the riverfront project on my tablet. He studied them for a long moment, his sharp eyes missing nothing. "This is genius, Ethan," he finally said, his voice a low rumble. "Pure genius." He took a sip of his coffee, his gaze turning serious. "But be careful. Richard's afraid of what he can't sell, kid. And he can't sell quiet competence. He sees blueprints, but he values billboards." His words lingered in my mind long after I left the coffee shop. A seed of doubt had been planted in the fertile ground of my hope. But I pushed it down. This time would be different. This project was too big, too important. This time, the work would be impossible to ignore. The night of the 50th anniversary gala arrived cloaked in an aura of tense anticipation. The grand ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel was a sea of black ties and sequin gowns. The air hummed with the murmur of 100 conversations, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the smooth sounds of a live jazz quartet. It was a monument to my father's success, a room filled with the city's most powerful people, bankers, politicians, developers, and, of course, our biggest rivals. I stood near the edge of the room, a glass of untouched champagne in my hand, feeling like an exhibit in my own family's museum. A massive screen behind the stage played a loop of our company's greatest achievements. The camera would linger on the elegant curves of the Orion Center or the bold lines of the Meridian Bridge, all structures born from my mind, from sleepless nights spent wrestling with physics and aesthetics. Yet, as people patted my father and Leo on the back, my name was never mentioned. I was the ghost in the machine. I saw my father and Leo in a hushed, intense conversation near the stage. Leo looked flushed and overly confident, while my father had a strange, resolute expression on his face. Mark, one of our sycophantic project managers who had hitched his wagon to Leo's star, hovered nearby, laughing too loudly at everything Leo said. Just then, a calm voice beside me said, "It's quite a spectacle." I turned to find Clara Blackwood standing there. She was elegant in a simple, dark green dress, her expression analytical and intelligent. Clara was a top project manager at Blackwood Designs, our fiercest competitor. Her father, William Blackwood, a man with a reputation for being as brilliant as he was ruthless, was holding court across the room. We were professional adversaries, but I had always respected her. She was sharp, direct, and understood the industry without the bluster. "It is that," I replied, managing a small smile. "They just showed the video of the riverfront complex," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "That's her design, isn't it?" I could tell. "It has a soul. That's rare." Her words were a balm on a wound I didn't even realize was so raw. For a moment, I felt seen. Truly seen. "Thank you, Clara. That means a lot, especially coming from you." "Talent is talent, Ethan," she said simply, before her father motioned for her. She gave me a small, respectful nod and walked away. That brief exchange was a pocket of warmth in an otherwise cold evening. It gave me a sliver of confidence. My work had a soul. Someone else saw it. My father had to see it, too. A few minutes later, the lights dimmed. The jazz quartet faded out. My father walked onto the stage, bathed in a single spotlight. The room fell silent. 50 years, he began, his voice filled with emotion. 50 years ago, I started this company with a rusty pickup truck and a dream. Today, we don't just build buildings. We build the skyline of this great city. He spoke of history, of struggles, of triumphs. Then his tone shifted. But a legacy isn't about the past. It's about the future. And the future is about leadership. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Tonight, I want to introduce you to that future. Leo, Ethan, will you please join me on stage? My heart hammered against my ribs as I walked up the steps, my dress shoes echoing on the polished wood. This was it. He was going to announce a joint leadership, a partnership. He would acknowledge my contribution. I stood beside Leo, squinting into the bright lights. My father placed a hand on my shoulder, the same gesture Leo had used, but this time it felt heavy, like an anchor. Ethan, he said, his voice projecting through the ballroom. His voice was cool, clinical. Ethan is the engine room. He draws the plans, makes sure the walls don't fall down. He paused, a showman to the end. He's essential as a backup. The word hung in the air, sharp and glittering and cruel. Backup. A wave of nausea rolled through me. The blood drained from my face. I could feel hundreds of pairs of eyes on me, a mixture of pity, confusion, and schadenfreude. From the corner of my eye, I saw Arthur Vance's face tighten into a mask of disgust. I saw William Blackwood raise an eyebrow, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze, while Clara looked genuinely shocked, her hand slightly covering her mouth. My father then turned to Leo, his entire demeanor changing. His face broke into a wide, proud smile. But a company needs a face, a voice, a leader who can sell the dream. And that leader, that future, is my son, Leo Hayes, the new CEO of Hayes and Son Construction. The room erupted in applause, a wave of sound that felt like a physical blow. It was scattered at first, hesitant, then grew stronger as people followed the social cue. Leo, my brother, raised his arms in triumph, a conquering hero. He didn't look at me once. I was frozen, a statue on a stage, hollowed out and put on display. The applause, the lights, my father's proud face, it all blurred into a meaningless, painful haze. I didn't hear the rest of his speech. I just stood there, the word backup carving itself into my mind like a wound that would never heal. Without a thought, I turned and walked off the stage. I didn't run. My steps were measured, deliberate. I walked through the stunned crowd, people parting before me as if I were a leper. I didn't go back to my table. I headed straight for the exit, pushing through the heavy ballroom doors and into the quiet, empty hallway. I didn't get far before I heard footsteps hurrying behind me. Ethan, what the hell was that? It was my father, his face flushed with anger, not concern. Leo was right behind him, his celebratory smile replaced by a defensive scowl. We ended up in a small, empty conference room off the main hall. The distant sound of the party was a mocking soundtrack to the implosion of my life. Backup, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. After everything I've given this family, this company, I'm a backup. It's a role, Ethan. A vital role. My father shot back, his voice rising. Don't be so damn emotional. This is business. I wasn't just building projects, Dad. I said, the words tasting like ash. I was building your legacy. And you call me a backup? A legacy needs a showman, he yelled, his face inches from mine. Not someone hiding behind a drafting table. Leo brings in the clients. He has the charisma. You're an artist, not a leader. The company can't afford an artist at the helm. This is my final decision. Leo, ever the opportunist, stepped forward. Don't be so dramatic, little brother, he said with a condescending smirk. It's for the best. You'll still have your job. That was the final cut. The quiet pity in his eyes. The confirmation that they had discussed this, planned this, and decided my worth without me. I looked from my brother's smug face to my father's unyielding one. And in that moment, something inside me broke. Or maybe it was finally forged into something hard and unbreakable. I slowly reached into my jacket, pulled out my wallet, and removed my company access card. I took the heavy brass key to the main office from my pocket. I walked to the polished mahogany table in the center of the room and placed them down side by side. The click of the metal on the wood was the only sound. No, I said, my voice steady and clear. I won't. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving them standing there in stunned silence. I didn't look back. I walked out of the hotel, away from the mocking laughter of the party, and into the cold, indifferent night. I was no longer Ethan Hayes, son and heir. I was just a backup, and I was on my own. The 2 weeks that followed the gala were a descent into a gray, featureless abyss. My world, once defined by the clean, precise lines of architecture, had collapsed into a chaotic mess of anger, humiliation, and a gnawing self-doubt that consumed me. I didn't answer my phone, which rang incessantly for the first few days with calls from my father, my mother, even Leo, calls I knew were born of damage control, not remorse. Then the calls stopped. The silence was worse. I spent my days walking aimlessly through the city, a ghost haunting the very skyline I had helped create. Every tower, every bridge, every structure that had once filled me with pride now felt like a monument to my own foolishness. I'd end up in cheap, dimly lit bars where no one knew my name. The burn of whiskey, a temporary anesthetic for the wound in my soul. At night, I'd lie awake, my father's words echoing in the darkness. You're an artist, not a leader. Was he right? The question was a poison, seeping into everything. Was I just a pair of hands, a mind for details, but without the fire, the core of strength required to lead? Had I spent my life mistaking technical skill for true worth? The thought was terrifying. It meant my father hadn't just betrayed me. He had seen a fundamental truth about me that I had refused to see myself. One cold, drizzly afternoon, I found myself standing across the street from the West End Public Library. It was one of the first projects I had designed on my own, a small but elegant building of brick and glass. I had been so proud of it. I watched as people went in and out, students with backpacks, elderly couples, a mother reading to her child on the steps. The building was alive. It was serving its purpose. It had a soul. A flicker of the old fire sparked within me. I had created that tangible, useful, beautiful thing. My father and Leo, they could sell dreams. But I could build them. I could give them foundations and walls and a roof. The thought didn't fix the gaping hole in my life, but it was a single solid point of light in the overwhelming darkness. It was there, standing in the rain, that my phone rang. For the first time in 2 weeks, I looked at the screen. It was Arthur Vance. I let it go to voicemail, but he called back immediately. And again, on the third try, I answered. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice gruff, no preamble. "What does it matter, Arthur?" "It matters. I'm at the Daily Grind, that coffee shop you like. Get over here. Now." He hung up. I didn't want to go, but something in his tone compelled me. 20 minutes later, I walked into the warm, coffee-scented cafe. Arthur was sitting at a corner table, 2 steaming mugs in front of him. He looked at my disheveled state, the stubble on my face, the exhaustion in my eyes, and didn't say a word about it. He just pushed a mug toward me. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Finally, he spoke. "So," he said, his gaze unwavering, "you gonna let him be right?" The question was blunt, a splash of cold water. "What?" "Your father." "Richard," he clarified, his voice laced with the old frustration. "You gonna hide in a bottle and let his words become your reality?" "I heard what he called you. A backup. You gonna let that be the last word on your career?" "He's the one with the empire." I mumbled into my cup. "I'm the one with nothing." Arthur let out a short, harsh laugh. "Kid, he has a company. You have the talent. Don't ever confuse the two. I've known your father for 40 years. Let me tell you a story. When we started out, I was you. I was the designer. He was the salesman. And he was terrified. Terrified that the clients respected my work more than his words. Pushing me out, and now, pushing you down. He's not doing this to you, Ethan. He's replaying his own damn history. He's trying to prove to the ghost of his own insecurity that the showman is more important than the builder. Don't you dare prove him right." His words struck me with the force of a physical blow. It reframed everything. This wasn't just about me. It was about my father's own deep-seated fears. "So what do I do, Arthur?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Where do I even start?" "You start by picking up a pencil," he said, a glint in his eye. "And you start building again. I know someone who values talent over talk. But he's a shark. You'll have to be ready." The shark was William Blackwood. The next day, I found myself in the sleek, minimalist headquarters of Blackwood Designs, a place that felt like the future. I was wearing my only good suit, feeling out of place and exposed. I expected a formal, sterile interview. What I got was a trial by fire. Blackwood was a tall, imposing man with piercing gray eyes that seemed to see right through you. He didn't care about my resume. He spread the plans for one of his struggling projects on the massive concrete conference table. "This project is over budget and behind schedule," he said, his voice a low baritone. "The client is threatening to walk. My team says it's a design flaw. Tell me what you see." For the next hour, we didn't talk about my past. We talked about load-bearing walls, logistical choke points, and material sourcing. The old, confident Ethan began to reemerge. I pointed out the flaws, but more importantly, I sketched out solutions right there on his plans. When I was finished, he stared at the sketches for a long moment. "You're good," he said. It wasn't a compliment. It was a statement of fact. Then he leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. "But being good isn't enough. I don't need another draftsman, Hayes. I need a partner. I'm thinking of a new division, focused on high-concept, ambitious projects. Blackwood and Hayes Design. You be the lead partner. But let me ask you one thing. Can you lead? Can you handle the pressure when the client is screaming and the budget is bleeding? Can you build a team and command their respect?" It was the same question I had been asking myself in the dark. Are you a leader? I thought of my father's dismissive tone. I thought of my brother's smug grin. I thought of the library standing proudly in the rain. "Yes," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I can." He nodded slowly. "Good. You'll be working directly with my head of operations. She'll be your partner in managing the projects." He pressed a button on his intercom. "Clara, could you come in, please?" The door opened, and Clara Blackwood walked in. She looked from her father to me, a flicker of professional surprise in her eyes, quickly masked. She extended a hand to me. "Welcome aboard, Ethan. I look forward to working with you." And so began the fight of my life. Clara and I became an unstoppable team. My vision, her execution. My creativity, her pragmatism. We worked seamlessly, challenging and refining each other's ideas. We started by taking over the struggling project Blackwood had shown me. In 3 months, we had it back on track and under budget. The client was thrilled. Our reputation grew. We started bidding for the city's most coveted projects, often finding ourselves in direct competition with Hayes and Son. And we started winning, not with slick sales pitches, but with superior, innovative designs and flawless execution plans. One afternoon, I was reviewing a contract when an article Clara had forwarded popped up on my screen. It was from the city's business journal. The headline read, "Hayes and Son fumbles major downtown project amidst leadership concerns." The article detailed how a multi-million-dollar development, led by Leo, was now mired in delays and safety violations. I didn't feel the rush of victory I expected. Instead, I felt a quiet, weary sadness. Later that week, I saw it for myself. I was leaving a late meeting and decided to take a different route home. It took me past a well-known, high-end bar. Through the large glass window, I saw a solitary figure slumped over the counter. It was Leo. Even from a distance, I could see the bravado had been stripped away. He looked exhausted, overwhelmed, and profoundly alone. He gestured vaguely to the bartender, his movements sluggish. He said something I couldn't hear, but his expression was one of pure despair. In that moment, he wasn't my triumphant rival. He was just a man crushed under the weight of a role he was never meant to have. I didn't go in. I just drove away, the image of my brother's defeat a quiet, somber note in my own ascent. The final call came on a Tuesday night. It was an unknown number, but I answered anyway. "Ethan." The voice was strained, almost unrecognizable. It was my father. "Son, we're in trouble. Leo, he messed up. The company needs you. Your vision. Please come back. We can fix this." I stood in my quiet apartment, looking out at the glittering city lights, at the skyline I was now helping to reshape. I thought of the Gala. I thought of the word backup. I thought of the last 2 years of relentless, back-breaking work. "The company had me," I said, my voice calm, professional, and devoid of the emotion he had always accused me of. "You made your choice, Dad, and I've made mine." I ended the call before he could reply, the silence in my apartment feeling not empty, but full of promise, full of the future I was building myself. 2 years passed. 2 years of relentless work, of bold designs, of risks taken and battles won. Blackwood and Hayes Design was no longer a new division. It was the most respected architectural firm in the city, the name synonymous with innovation and quality. We hadn't just competed with Hayes and Son. We had redefined the industry standard, leaving my father's company, now a shadow of its former self, struggling for relevance. My partnership with Clara had blossomed into something far deeper than a professional alliance. We had built an empire of steel and glass by day, and by night, we had built a relationship forged in mutual respect, shared ambition, and a quiet, profound understanding. She had seen me in my lowest and had been the co-architect of my greatest comeback. I proposed on a crisp autumn afternoon, not in a fancy restaurant, but on a windswept hill overlooking the city. Below us, the skyline we had helped create gleamed in the setting sun. I didn't have a flashy speech. I just told her that she was the foundation of my new life and that I wanted to build the rest of my future with her. Her yes was as certain and as solid as the bedrock beneath our feet. We decided on a small wedding, an intimate affair at a vineyard an hour outside the city. It was a world away from the cold ostentation of my family's gala. The guest list was small, comprised of the people who formed our true family. Arthur Vance, his eyes glistening with a pride my own father had never shown me. Our closest colleagues from the firm. And of course, William Blackwood. Before the ceremony, he pulled me aside. He wasn't the ruthless shark I had first met, but a man with a warm, paternal light in his eyes. He straightened my tie and clasped my shoulder. I didn't just gain a brilliant partner, Ethan, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I gained a son. His words were the validation I had stopped seeking but meant the world to receive. I had sent an invitation to my parents and Leo, not out of malice, but out of a sense of closure. Part of me, a small, foolish part, wondered if they would come. They didn't. Their absence was a final, silent statement. But as I stood waiting for Clara, watching her walk toward me through the rows of sun-dappled vines, their absence didn't matter. Her presence was everything. The day before the wedding, I received a cold, formal email. It wasn't a congratulatory note. It was from a law firm representing Hayes and Son, requesting a meeting to discuss a potential acquisition and merger. They wanted Blackwood and Hayes to buy them out, to absorb their failing company as a last-ditch effort to save the family name. I typed a one-word reply to the lawyer and hit send. No. That night, standing on the balcony of the penthouse apartment Clara and I now shared, the city spread out before us like a carpet of diamonds. The weight of the past few years finally settled. The victory was complete. It was quiet, personal, and absolute. Clara came to stand beside me, wrapping her arms around my waist and resting her head on my shoulder. We stood in comfortable silence for a long time, watching the endless flow of traffic on the distant highways. "Do you ever think about them?" she asked softly, her voice barely disturbing the quiet of the night. I didn't have to ask who they were. The question hung in the air, simple and heavy. I thought of my father's pride, my brother's insecurity, the hollow empire they had chosen over me. I thought of the pain, the anger, the long climb back. Every day, I answered, my voice honest. The bitterness was gone, replaced by a mature, bittersweet ache. I lost a family to build all this. I turned and took her hand, my fingers lacing through hers. The warmth of her touch was a grounding force. But I found a new one. She smiled, a sad but understanding smile, and leaned her head against me again. I looked out at the skyline, at the towers of glass and steel that pierced the night sky. My father was wrong. I wasn't a backup, but he had been right about one thing, in a way he never intended. The timid artist who was publicly humiliated at the gala couldn't have survived what came next. I had been forced to become more. I had to learn to lead, to fight, to build not just buildings, but a life, a future, a fortress of my own making. And as I looked at the beautiful, sprawling, complicated city before me, I understood a final, fundamental truth of my craft. Every great structure requires a sacrifice.